Hi, I'm Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni, co-founder of Arna Gen Next Solutions, a microbiome-based resource platform that provides digital courses for students of life sciences, medicine, and nutrition to learn more about the human microbiome. An app called Microbiome Superhero so that children learn healthier habits. We also do outreach programs and webinars for all kinds of audience to know about gut health. We do research related to the gut microbiome. And of course, we have our very own unique Shatayushi 360 degrees total transformation program to improve gut health, to improve overall physical, emotional, and mental health. So there are many things that we do in order to improve our gut microbiome. One of the endeavors is this podcast, the Microbiome Superhero Podcast. So, welcome viewers to this second episode of the podcast. We have a very special person here for the discussion today. So, I want to welcome Sujata Gokhale. She is the host speaker. She is one of us, one of the directors, co founders, along with Renuka Kelkar and myself. And the unique thing about Sujata is that she's an engineer, but she's also a food researcher and a food blogger at Arnagen Next. So, Sujata, I want the viewers to know how you are in this field of nutrition and the microbiome, in spite of being an engineer.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. Yeah, we have been in this journey for about 2 years now, and we are doing a lot of work on Shatayushi. Interestingly, I am an engineer, like you introduced me, and everybody is curious to really know why I am in this field. But there is a story to it. My uncles and my dad, all of them were diagnosed with diabetes very early in stage, very early in life, actually, around their 30s. And it was not prevalent with my grandparents. So it became a real, what to say, question mark as to what went wrong and why did they have to go through the trials of diabetics. And it was really a new disease at that time of, at the time when they got that particular chronic disease of diabetes. It was relatively new, so people actually did not know how to control diabetes. So all kinds of methods were started on it. Some started recommending the stopping of wheat, stopping of rice totally, going on a wheat based diet. And so much experimentation was going on. But one thing was very clear: it was related somehow to the nutrition, and a lot of studies were happening. That was when it actually hit me that nutrition does play a very big role in our well-being. Unfortunately, I lost my uncles also pretty soon. They hardly hit their 60s, so that was very hard fact to digest. We tried, even my dad, we tried to control his diets, do a lot of experiments with his food, the salads and soups and things like that, introducing. And but nothing, much could be done, and I lost him pretty early in life. But I saw a different aspect to my aunt, who also had diabetes because of that particular age. When they were traveling around, their food styles changed. But when she came back and settled in her native place, she went back to her traditional roots. So she had her sort of age longevity increased more than my dad and my uncles. So that was an interesting aspect for me as to what changed in her diet that she could, you know, live longer than my uncles and my dad, who had to go through the problems of being a diabetic. So that's how I am here, and that led to a lot of reading, and then came the microbiome reading, and it's a very, very interesting journey. I think I would love to be called more of a food researcher than an engineer now.
Yes, that's why you are very much an integral part of our company and the research that we are doing. Well, all of our journeys start in a similar way. I am a geneticist. I have done research in cancer genetics, but I remember that as a child, I saw so many over prescriptions of antibiotics, so many supplements being given to myself, other children, that at one point, in spite of being, so young, I felt that, this cannot be the way forward. This cannot be the solution. Prescription of medicines and antibiotics cannot be the solution for all kinds of medical problems. And now, as adults, we hear this so often. We have been volunteering also for this cause, that food is the first medicine that we have to consider before we go to any kinds of medications, because we have been doing so many things wrong. So if I talk about the diet, not just the Indian diet, any diet for that matter, the first thing that comes to my mind is carbohydrates make up a lot of our diet. So we are looking at grains, different kinds of grains. But two grains that feature very high on this list anywhere you go in the world are wheat and rice. And there are so many issues with that. There are so many different problems with that. So today's podcast is based on exactly this. What are we eating? What were our ancestors eating? And how did we end up here? What can we do to change these things? So we are just going to focus on wheat, rice, and millets.
Yes, very interesting part here, Rashmi. Sorry, don't mind the background noise because I have children playing outside and I'm outdoors doing this recording. So they are actually enhancing their microbiome playing outside. We'll come to that later.
Wonderful.
But very interesting thing there because, like I told you, continuing on the journey of my aunt, once she came back to her native place, she started, integrating the traditional foods in her diet, the lifestyle. And whenever we visited them, I'm predominantly from Karnataka, so ragi mudde forms an integral part of our meal. So whenever she would, serve us a ragi mudde, and we would make faces. We were young then. We would make faces and we would say, "What is this? This is not the trendy food that we eat. You take us to a Punjabi restaurant where naan, those days naan eating and roti eating was a trend. So take us there and we'll have those butter paneer. I mean, paneer butter and paneer butter and naan and things like that." So she would just say, "No, these are the ancestors had these food," and then she would talk about siridhanya. So siridhanya consists of 5 different millets. So when we had this conversation with her, I asked her, and it was very difficult for me to digest that these were the food that our ancestors ate, because most of them you see on the plate, these those days were wheat and rice. So I mean, how do you justify that your ancestors ate millets? And then she would say, "Go back to your history roots." And I really went reading, honestly, Rashmi, and I found an interesting part to it. Millets were long known in China 8,000 years prior to our current years. So you can imagine how old they were then. I mean, millets were there 8,000 years before the current years now that we are talking about. Yajurveda, for that matter, our Vedic text has mention of many of these millets. So those texts were written somewhere in the Bronze Age of India, 4,500 BC. You know, so they were there then. So they were being consumed by our ancestors, and somehow over the period of time, because uh, wheat and rice were easy to harvest, grew in large quantities, and could be easily consumed, without having any pre-work done to it. They were taken in as the common staple diet for all of us. And then I talked about, why these millets were termed as siridhanya, the 5 millets. So I asked and I wanted to find out the meaning of the word siridhanya. And then it was great, amazing fact to know that Siri meant wealth and Dhanya is grains. So they are wealthy grains. So wealthy grains in terms of both nutritional, because they are having high nutritional content. And second is that because they were easy to grow, the farmers could grow them and feed their families anytime, and they gave good health to the family. So they were indeed wealthy in terms of giving good health. So these were some of the interesting aspects of millets that we as people of India have forgotten. Then, if you see the traditional, I mean, the recent links, we still use millets when we fast. What about kuttu ka paratha or kuttu ki roti in north, which is buckwheat, which is a kind of a millet. And then we have sama, we have vari in Maharashtra. So there are millets that we have been using. Why even jowar and bajra, which is eaten as a common day meal by the harvesters these days, but actually it was part of everybody's diet. But today farmers have that as a meal, everyday meal option. So it was part of our culture. It was part of our food plate. But somewhere over the period of time, we have lost touch with the millets that we used to eat and give us good health.
Yes, it is very interesting that you mentioned Sri Dhanya and that it meant wealth. It means wealth. If we think of millets, most people had this misconception that oh, this is a poor man's diet. Or at least a few years ago, that was the case. And now millets are gaining popularity as if it's some new health food. There, somebody has recently discovered that oh, this is so good for our health. But if we look back at the traditional Indian thali, it had millets all the time. The Indian thali is a perfect example of a very well balanced plate where we have all kinds of diversity. Well, that's a different topic for a different day. But when we talk about the grains that we are eating, just the kind of diversity that we have, when we talk about microbiome diversity, isn't that something that we always talk about? How many millets did India have before? How many do we still have? And what are we eating? If I think of just myself, I grew up eating mostly, wheat, rice, and some millets, maybe jowar and bajra. Not very different millets other than that, and that too, it was not very frequent. The most frequent ones were wheat and rice. And now, if I think of what our ancestors had and how damaging it has been, not for our not just for our ecosystem, but for our overall health. Recently, I remember we had this discussion of there might be around how many different millets. I think you should
Yes.
go ahead with
I
that.
mean, recently in G20, Ranimati Guria was, felicitated for actually preserving 30 varieties of millet. So just imagine if she could, and she started recently, preserving them. But 30 varieties of millets is what she has preserved. Just imagine how much we have lost over a period of time because they're that way very fragile but hardy, yes, but some of them survived the climatic changes and they stayed with us. Some of them totally lost because we never cultivated them, so they were lost to us. Now
Yes.
that is a real interesting fact to know that, and she's called the queen of millets, by the way.
Very interesting to know that. So, when we talk about these diverse millets, most people don't even know that there are different kinds of millets. If we talk to anyone, they say, "Oh, I'm eating millets." I had mentioned that in the previous one. There are so many different kinds of millets, but yet we are focusing on eating wheat and rice because they are convenient. Even the varieties of rice that we eat are not the traditional ones, not how we used to eat rice before. They are very processed, they are very low in nutrition, very high in glycemic index. So doing all of the wrong things, and then all of this, too much wheat, too much rice that is processed, is leading to all of the chronic diseases that we can think of. That is one of the reasons which is preventable. So I was just going through what it can do to the microbiome. We are reducing the diversity. So wheat and millets actually have similar glycemic index, but the thing we need to consider here is that millets are nutritionally a lot richer than wheat.
Yes,
The other
yes.
thing to consider here is that glycemic index is not the only thing. Millets are gluten free. So what
Yes,
does gluten do
that's
to
an
our overall health?
interesting.
Yes.
That's an interesting aspect because wheat is having a lot of gluten, and if people wonder what gluten is, it's a kind of a sticky protein that wheat has. So just imagine your pizza, why it's stretchy when he throws up that pizza base in the air. It gets stretched very nicely because of the gluten in it. So that is what could cause a lot of issues with our gut. Just imagine having a sticky rubber piece in your gut, something very sticky, or a chewing gum for that matter, in your gut. So how would your microbiome thrive in that kind of an situation? So it's just a visualization of what could happen if we have too much of gluten. And then gluten is another interesting fact is when the global wheat production increased by over 50%, and we found that parallelly we could see that even diseases during the same period also increased by the same percentage. So that there was a connection with the rise in global wheat production with the rise in diseases. And this was at, I mean, people did not realize till now that these were interlinked, interconnected. And the diseases that you will be amazed to hear are rheumatoid arthritis, type 2 diabetes. I'm talking about already from the beginning, because I've my whole family has been through it. And then celiac diseases, that is sensitivity to gluten, and because of that, a lot of inflammatory diseases of the gut, we can see that they are been having autoimmune immune diseases. That was interesting to even read that these were also part of the diseases that have risen in number. You must be knowing about the numbers that
Yes.
we
So,
come across these
yes,
days.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely. So when
And
you
these are
talk
all
about it,
caused
it's
by
very interesting.
inflammation that is happening because of the gluten and the leaky gut that you mentioned about. These are all leading to these kind of diseases. And they have, again, when you they are made when the diet is made gluten free, you can see a reduction in some of the symptoms in these autoimmune diseases. Psoriasis, that, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. Oh my God, the list is endless. Rashmi, let me tell you that. I
Yes. So
don't
we'll
want
put
to.
up some reviews where people can actually look at the scientific evidence for this.
Yes, yes, I have listed some of the papers, so you can have a look at that, and you can see. It is frightening, but I don't mean to frighten the people here. But it would be better if they moved on to millets. Millets was traditionally our food, on our plate. We gave it up somewhere, and like you said, they are very nutritionally beneficial because they have rich in proteins. They are rich in we constantly ask, how do I make up my protein intake for the day, but add millets along with your pulses. That's it. Your protein intake is done there. You don't have to worry much more about it. Then
Absolutely.
you have all your minerals. Again, you don't have to go and take your mineral supplements. You have calcium, iron. Anemic people have found great benefit when they have taken millets in their diet. They have been
Yes,
benefited
yes.
really well
The
with
nutritional
millet.
content is a lot richer. The other thing about gluten sensitivity that you talked, gluten free, millets are gluten free. When we have gluten in our diet that comes from wheat that we consume every single day, most people are doing that in some form or the other, and refined flour or even whole wheat flour. What happens is this gluten cannot be digested by us. It has to be digested by a specific set of bacteria that, people who eat millets don't have those bacteria. They are only present in people who eat gluten or who eat diet that
Yes,
has wheat.
yes,
And then these bacteria are fermenting gluten, they're digesting gluten into smaller particles that are immunogenic, that cause these autoimmune, that can lead to autoimmune diseases, and that can lead to celiac diseases in people who have a genetic predisposition to it. So these are the things we are causing all of these autoimmune diseases by making our gut microbiome is actually making those immune molecules that that our body is responding to. So that's what happens when we consume gluten. When we stop doing that, those immune reactions are not going to happen.
besides that, there are innumerable benefits of millets. Cardiovascular health, because it has a potential to reduce your lipid profile, the triglycerides and the bad LDL that we accumulate over a period of time, which we Indians do have a tendency to, so those are reduced a lot by the use of millets. They're rich in antioxidants as well. So free
Yes.
radical scavenging is also, taken care of. And then, like I said, the nutrients that we get out of them, and of course, good for diabetes, people who are having diabetic autoimmune diseases. So it has shown, I mean, if you see, it has covered almost all the range of the diseases that we are currently facing, the chronic
Yes.
diseases that we are looking at these days. So that would be a wonderful change to, change over to millets. But another interesting fact is how to consume millets. That's a
Yes, before we come to that, just two things I want to mention here. That first thing is that we are creating things because of this gluten sensitivity and the immunogenic nature of what the products of gluten digestion are. The other thing is we are not even getting the right kind of nutrients by consuming wheat. We are missing out on all of those crucial nutrients. So just by switching over to millets, we can get all of those nutrients. The nutrients themselves are going to help us prevent a lot of diseases. That's how our ancestors probably grew up eating millets and preventing diseases. And the best thing is that they are easy to grow in whatever local areas. I'm
yes,
sure there
yes,
were local seasonal millets, just like jowar and bajra are seasonal, and consuming them in that seasonality, consuming them from that local area, consuming the right kind of millets obviously was giving them the right kind of iron, the right kind of calcium, and they also knew how to eat them, which is something that we have totally lost out on. If
yes.
we eat them in any form, we think we are going to get the same nutrition out of it. So that is a very important. I interrupted you in between because I know
No, no,
that's a
no.
very important topic to cover and it will take much longer.
No, thank you, Rashmi, because that topic needs to be brought. The other day, my friend came home and she said, "I'm gifting you a packet of, millet rava." I said, "Okay, thank you." And I looked at it and it is really convenient to use. But then I went back and thought about the processes that go into it. And then it made me wonder, you know, millets actually, like they are pest resistant. They don't need much of pesticides. They are hardy, grains, but they are pest resistant because they have the inbuilt mechanism of protecting themselves from the pest by having some kind of anti nutrients on on their grains, and that those anti nutrients actually do not even help us if we consume them directly. So they
Yes.
prevent our nutritional absorption of the, and they can also create things like, stomach disorders, constipation. And I believe that probably this was the reason why we gave up on millets, because we didn't know how to consume them. Okay, so the best thing to get over it is to soak those millets. That is the best way to do that, is to soak them for 6 to 8 hours and then cook them in the form that you would want to cook them. So what happens is, when you go for debraning or dehulling, or removing the husk, the cover of the millets, is all the nutrients of the millet also are on that, because it's a very little grain, it doesn't have much surface area. The nutrients are on its surface. So those nutrients which are on the surface, if you hull them, polish them, brand them, debrand them, they are going to get lost. Similarly, when you soak them, you need not keep washing them in multiple times in the water, because they might lose their nutrients. And the water in which you soak needs to be used to be cooked them to cook them as well. Otherwise, again, you will lose the nutrients. So they are very fragile and frail, but they're a powerhouse of nutrients. So we need to only, take care of certain things by which we can take the maximum benefits of the millets. Other ways are that you soak them, then dry them, and then powder them. So by that way, their anti-nutrient capacities have reduced, and you can use them as flour and make your rotis and chapatis. So germination is another interesting part. We talked about germination having, it's they are live plants, so they have
Yes.
actually let all their defense guard down and brought all their nutrition, the plants that they are germinating, they have let down all their defense mechanisms, and they have brought in all the nutrient and pepped up, because they are actually supporting a life. So they have all that amino acids and everything ready for the new life that is coming up. So when you germinate,
Yes.
when you germinate them, you are getting the maximum out of those grains as well. So that
Yes,
is
so you
another.
talked about soaking and sprouting. So we have covered that, but when we soak and sprout millets, they are already nutritional powerhouses. Then we actually take it to the next level and we ensure that we are able to absorb the nutrients that they have to offer.
Yes,
So that is an
because
amazing thing to do.
they also make it easy for us to digest those proteins and
Yes.
help the nutrient absorption from those millets as well. So that is
The
the way
other
the.
thing here is the choice of millets because we always talk about which millets to use. There are so many different millets, but there are three different kinds of millets, and if we can quickly,
Yeah,
mention
the
what those are
millets
and
that
how they are beneficial.
the the millets I would talk about are the neutral and the positive millets. They are basically identified as neutral and positive because positive actually improves your, conditions. I mean, helps you reverse chronic diseases. So they are providing you the corrective action to remove the causative diseases. So they are called positive, millets, and neutral are the ones that actually keep you in that same state that as you are. So ragi, jowari, and bajra are called as neutral millets. You eat them, you can have them on a daily basis, no issues with that. The positive millets are the foxtail millet, podo millet, then we have little millet, barnyard millet, and brown top millet. Now, I would like to thank Dr. Khader Vali, who is called as the Millet Man of India here, because he
Absolutely.
has done a lot of work on that, and he has actually given a protocol for each disease as to what millets and how many times you have to have that in a set of 10 days to actually help benefit from those millets in curing the conditions that you might have. So, thank you, Dr. Kadirwali. You have done a wonderful job, and I hope, along with him and along with us as a team, Arana Gen Next, we hope that most of our followers and most of our the people who watch this podcast would bring millet back into their lives and will on their own understand the benefits of incorporating millets, because they'll see their health improve. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And it's not something that's, very big task to do. It's very easy that even if we start small, if we start incorporating one millet per week and then move on to, incorporating more and more positive millets, it's a lot easier. If we just look at the nutritional profile of all of the positive millets and see how many kinds of, how much iron they're providing, how much calcium, how much zinc, how many other minerals, what is the fiber content, what is the protein content, why wouldn't our cells be happy receiving all of that nutrition? That is a good reason why we are able to prevent and reverse diseases, because our cells are getting what they want by consuming these millets. That's why there is this specific sequence of, which millets to incorporate, because those are the nutrients that we need for that
Yes,
particular disorder.
yes,
That
yes.
is the explanation that we can give. And we really need to look at Dr. Khader Vali has done amazing work. So incorporating millets is not very difficult. If we think about rice, wild rice, colored rice, the red rice, black rice, they are amazing in antioxidants, but that's not the common rice that we use. So if we
Yes,
just go back to looking at the traditional advice, the traditional foods that we were eating, we can improve our health in such simple ways. That's what we are trying to do here in this podcast. That what are the simple ways in which we can prevent disease? What are the simple ways in which we can enrich our microbiome? And this is a very good example. If we go back to our Indian thali and look at what was in that thali, what were the grains, which were millets were used, what conditions do we have? Can we correlate that with anything that is already published? That for anemia, you mentioned last time that for anemia there are specific millets that are rich in iron. If we eat them in the right way, after soaking, cooking, whatever, sprouting even before that, why would we still be anemic? So that's just a very small example
yes,
of what
very much.
what magic these millets can do.
I'll just briefly touch on one interesting aspect. I mean, millets are so known to be even prebiotics. That means they are actually providing food for the microorganisms to thrive. So when
Yes,
it
they are
has
an
been
amazing
cooled,
source of
yeah,
fiber
yes, fiber.
that is
So that is,
digested just by the gut microbiome, not by us. So that
yes,
is one very big reason why we should eat,
big reason why
millets.
we
They are
should
good
go for
prebiotic
that.
foods.
Yes.
They are great sources of all kinds of nutrients. That is why we need to bring back the millets.
So many
Thank you so
years.
much, Sujata,
Yes,
for your
thank you.
wonderful insights. And this was just the tip of the iceberg. We are going to
Yes,
bring many more things with
more
Sujata.
session.
So
Thank you, Rashmi, for this opportunity, and thank you very much. I hope we'll make the change that we bring need to bring millets onto the table.
thank you so much. So, viewers, I hope you got some easy tips about using millets and the importance of using millets, why you should consume those. If you want recipes, we are going to post some in the description below. Do let us know in the comments box if you have incorporated millets and how they have changed your health. We would love to hear from you. Do let us know in the comments section. Thank you for watching.